Ryan loved spending
Let's
his
see what's in
weekends
here.
exploring garage
It's
sales.
still cold.
There was something about old, forgotten items that always fascinated him. Every table and driveway seemed to hold a story, waiting for someone to discover it. Some people saw junk, but Ryan saw treasure. That Saturday morning, the sun was warm, and the streets were quiet. He walked slowly, carrying a small bag to keep anything he might buy. Most of the garage sales had familiar items: old books stacked in piles, slightly broken toys, and kitchenware that had seen better days. Some of the toys reminded him of his childhood. Some of the books he picked up, flipped through, and then put back. Then, at the last house on the block, he saw it. A large, rusty refrigerator sitting behind a small wooden table. Its white paint had yellowed with age, and the metal handle was chipped and bent. The door was closed, but it did not look locked. Ryan felt a spark of curiosity. He had seen old refrigerators before, but there was something about this one that made it different. It looked heavy, like it had lived a long life in a kitchen that no longer existed. Ryan walked closer and tapped the door lightly. It made a hollow sound. He smiled. "Perfect," he said quietly to himself. He imagined cleaning it up, maybe keeping it in his garage for extra storage, or even restoring it as a project. He could almost see it shining again, like a brand new appliance in a modern kitchen. He called out to the woman running the sale. She was elderly, with gray hair tied in a bun, and a gentle smile on her face. "Excuse me, ma'am. How much for the refrigerator?" She looked at it and shrugged. "It hasn't worked in years. You can have it for $10 if you want. I was going to throw it away anyway." Ryan's eyes widened. $10 for such a large fridge? It was almost too good to be true. He nodded. "I'll take it." With a small cart he found nearby, Ryan carefully rolled the refrigerator to his truck. The wheels squeaked, and the metal scraped against the concrete. He wiped sweat from his forehead as he lifted the heavy appliance into the back of the truck. There was a strange excitement in him as he imagined bringing it home. What secrets could be hiding inside? Back at his house, Ryan's garage was quiet and organized. He had just enough space to move the fridge inside. Dragging it across the concrete floor, he finally pushed it into a corner. The metal handle felt cold under his hand. He wiped some of the dust off the top and carefully opened the door. The hinges creaked loudly, as if the fridge was waking from a long sleep. Inside, he expected to find empty shelves, maybe a few old containers left behind. Instead, he saw something unusual. The fridge was empty except for a small, yellowed envelope taped to the top shelf. Its paper looked old and fragile. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. Who would leave an envelope inside a broken refrigerator? He carefully peeled the tape and removed the envelope. Holding it in his hands, he noticed that there was no name on it, and no return address. The handwriting on the front was neat, faded with age, but readable. He slowly opened it and unfolded the paper inside. The message was short, but it made Ryan stop breathing for a moment. It read, "Do not open the secret box in the garage. Danger awaits if you do." Ryan frowned. He looked around his garage. There was nothing else unusual that he could see. Maybe this was a prank, a leftover joke from the previous owner. Still, the warning made him feel uneasy. Why leave such a note in an old fridge at a garage sale? Curiosity started to rise inside him. He put the note down on the workbench and stared at the fridge. It was just an ordinary appliance, after all. Rusty, old, and broken, but ordinary. Still, he could not shake the feeling that something was strange about it. The metal felt colder than the rest of the garage, and he thought he saw shadows moving inside when he looked away too quickly. Ryan took a deep breath and told himself to calm down. "It's just an old fridge. Nothing more," he said. He decided to leave it for a while and focus on cleaning up some other items in his garage. As he turned to walk away, he heard it, a soft thud from inside the fridge. He froze in place, listening carefully. The sound came again, this time like a soft scrape, almost as if something small had moved inside. Ryan's curiosity now outweighed his caution. He picked up a flashlight from the workbench and shone it into the fridge. The light reflected off the shelves and illuminated the envelope he had just removed. But there was something else. Something dark, shiny, and small sitting just behind the top shelf. He leaned closer, holding his breath. The object looked unusual, like it did not belong in an ordinary fridge. His hands trembled slightly. He knew that opening it might reveal something important, maybe even dangerous. The warning in the envelope echoed in his mind. But Ryan's curiosity was stronger than fear. Carefully, he reached inside the fridge. His fingers brushed against the object, and it felt smooth and cold. Slowly, he pulled it out. It was a small, metal box, not very big but heavy for its size. It had scratches all over, and the lid had a small latch. Ryan placed the box on the workbench and examined it. There were no markings, no name, nothing to hint at what was inside. He thought about Mrs. Holt. Could this have belonged to her? Or maybe the previous owner of the fridge? Why hide it here, and why leave a warning? He tried to open the latch carefully. It resisted at first, then clicked open. Inside, Ryan found something that made his eyes widen in surprise. There were several old photographs, yellowed with age, and some small handwritten notes. They looked like they belonged to someone from many years ago. Each photo seemed to tell a story. One showed a family in front of a house Ryan did not recognize. Another showed a small child holding a shiny toy. The notes were written in careful handwriting, but the words were hard to read in some places. Ryan felt like he had uncovered a hidden piece of someone's past. He realized that this fridge was not just an old appliance. It had been a hiding place for something precious. The warning in the envelope suddenly made sense. It was meant to protect whatever was inside the box. He sat down on a nearby stool, holding the photographs in his hands. Questions filled his mind. Who had hidden these items in the fridge? Why had they chosen this old, broken appliance? And what other secrets could be waiting, hidden in plain sight? As Ryan studied the photos and notes, he felt a sense of connection to the past, to people he had never met but whose lives had been preserved in this small box. He knew one thing for certain: his Saturday treasure hunt had turned into something much bigger than he ever imagined. The rusty refrigerator, once forgotten and ignored, had led him to a mystery that was waiting to be uncovered. Ryan smiled to himself, feeling both excitement and a little fear. He could sense that this was just the beginning of a story that would change his ordinary weekend into something extraordinary. Ryan sat on the small stool in his garage, staring at the old metal box he had pulled from the rusty refrigerator. He carefully lifted the lid again, even though he had already peeked inside. The photographs and handwritten notes were neatly stacked, as if someone had wanted them to survive for decades. The handwriting was elegant, looping, and deliberate. It looked like it had been written with care and love. He picked up the first note. The paper was brittle, and he held it gently so it would not tear. The message was short but strange. The treasure is not gold. It is the truth. Protect it. Ryan frowned. Truth. What kind of truth could someone hide inside a metal box in an old fridge? He looked at the photographs again. One of them showed a family in front of a house, smiling at the camera. A man, a woman, and a little boy stood in front of a wooden house with a small garden. In the background, a large tree cast a shadow over the porch. The photo looked old, at least 50 years, and the edges were curled and yellowed. Ryan noticed something odd. Behind the tree, faint but clear, there seemed to be a small door or panel built into the side of the house. It looked strange, like a hidden entrance. His curiosity grew. He had to know more. He carefully opened the next note. This one seemed more personal. The handwriting was smaller and more careful. If you are reading this, then you are meant to find the story. Keep it safe, and learn what was hidden. Some things are dangerous if revealed too soon. Ryan shivered. Danger. He had only found a box in a fridge, but the note suggested something much more serious. He looked around his garage, suddenly feeling as if someone might be watching. Of course, no one was there. but the warning made the air feel heavier, as if the metal box carried more weight than just its contents. He decided to go through the rest of the photographs carefully. One picture showed the little boy alone, holding a small, wrapped package. His eyes were serious, almost worried. The boy's clothes were old-fashioned, and his shoes were scuffed, but he seemed proud of whatever he was holding. Ryan wondered who the boy was and what had been inside the package. Another photograph showed the same boy older, sitting at a desk with papers and a small wooden chest in front of him. Ryan leaned closer. The chest looked very similar to the metal box he had found. Could it be that this box had belonged to the boy in the photo? He felt a strange connection forming between himself and the person who had hidden these items so long ago. Ryan decided to read all the notes before making any guesses. One of the last notes in the stack was different. It was thicker, almost like a journal page. The handwriting was hurried, and the words were shorter. Do not trust strangers. Do not show the box. If discovered, destroy the path to it. One day, someone worthy will find it, and the story will continue. That person must understand the meaning of patience and care. Ryan held his breath. Someone worthy? Patience and care? It was as if the person who had hidden the box had left a challenge, a test for whoever found it. He felt both excitement and nervousness. He was no longer just a man who had bought a rusty refrigerator. He was now part of a mystery that had traveled decades through time. He set the notes and photographs aside and examined the metal box itself. The latch was simple but sturdy. There was no lock, no keyhole, no indication of what might be inside besides the papers and photos. He shook it lightly, curious. It rattled faintly. Whatever else was inside, it was small and hard. Ryan's mind raced. Could there be something more inside the box than just these papers? The notes had warned about danger and secrecy. What if the box contained something important, something someone had wanted to hide at all costs? His heart beat faster. He remembered the photograph of the boy holding the wrapped package. Maybe the metal box had been that package. And maybe the boy had hidden it in the fridge to keep it safe. But why leave it behind for decades? Ryan felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. He had found something precious, and it was now in his hands. Ryan decided to investigate the photographs further. He studied the image of the wooden house with the hidden door. Something about it caught his attention. The tree shadow, the position of the door, and the angle of the photo. It was as if the boy wanted anyone who looked at the photo to notice the small detail. Ryan had to see the place for himself. He quickly searched online for old maps of his town, looking for wooden houses built decades ago. Hours passed, but finally he found a match, a house that matched the one in the photograph almost exactly. It was on the outskirts of town, hidden behind tall trees. Ryan's heart raced. Could this be the place connected to the metal box? He decided to wait until morning to visit. The sun was setting, and the shadows in his garage made the box seem heavier, more mysterious. Ryan placed it carefully on a shelf and covered it with a cloth. He locked the garage door and went inside, but he could not stop thinking about the story. That night, Ryan could not sleep. He kept imagining the boy in the photographs, the old house, and the hidden door. Who had written the notes? Who had wanted to protect the metal box? And why had the fridge been chosen as the hiding place? He wondered if he was the worthy person mentioned in the notes, meant to continue the story. The next morning, Ryan packed a small bag with essentials and drove to the outskirts of town. His excitement grew with every mile. When he finally saw the wooden house, it looked almost exactly like the photographs. The large tree stood beside it, and in the shadow, Ryan spotted the small panel that had caught his attention. It looked like a hidden door, just as in the photograph. Ryan approached carefully. The panel was old, its wood weathered by years of rain and sun. He gently tapped it. It did not move. He looked around. The house appeared empty, abandoned for a long time. But the presence of the tree, the hidden panel, and the photographs in his garage made him certain he had found the right place. He took a deep breath and examined the panel more closely. There were small scratches around the edges, almost like someone had opened it many times before. Ryan pushed gently. The panel creaked and swung open. Inside was a small, narrow space, just big enough to hold a box like the one he had found. Dust covered the inside, but it was empty, except for the faint scent of old wood and paper. Ryan's mind raced. This was it. This was the place where the boy must have hidden the metal box. The story was real, and he had uncovered the secret path. The notes, the photographs, and the box all connected perfectly. He felt a shiver of excitement. He was holding history in his hands. He realized that his journey had only just begun. The metal box in his garage was a link to a past full of secrets. Ryan knew that uncovering the rest of the story would take time, patience, and care, just as the notes had warned. But he was ready. As he closed the panel and walked back to his car, he felt a strange mixture of thrill and responsibility. The fridge had been the beginning. The metal box was the key. And the story waiting to be discovered promised to change his ordinary life in ways he could not yet imagine. Ryan smiled to himself. He was ready for the adventure. Back at his garage, Ryan placed the metal box carefully on the workbench. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust particles in the air and casting a warm glow on the old photographs. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The house on the outskirts of town, the hidden panel, and the photographs all pointed to a story waiting to be discovered. But what exactly was that story? He opened the box again and took out the notes, one by one. Each page seemed more personal than the last. Some notes were brief, with cryptic warnings, while others were longer, almost like diary entries. One note caught his attention immediately. The truth is hidden in the past. To understand, you must remember the people who came before. They protected it for a reason. Ryan read the note several times. He had already felt the connection to the boy in the photographs, but now he realized the significance of the words. This box was more than a keepsake. It was a record, a puzzle, a secret someone had spent their life protecting. He decided to focus on the diary-like notes. They told small stories about the boy's life, the people around him, and the events that led him to hide the box. Ryan discovered that the boy's name was Samuel. The photographs, the small wooden chest, and the old papers had belonged to him. Samuel had lived in the wooden house decades ago. According to the notes, he had witnessed events in his neighborhood that were confusing and dangerous. His family had wanted to keep certain things hidden, to protect them from people who might not understand. Ryan studied one particular photograph more closely. It showed Samuel, perhaps 10 years old, holding the small wooden chest with great care. His eyes were serious, almost as if he understood the importance of what he was holding. Ryan could sense the weight of responsibility in Samuel's expression. It was remarkable that a child had been trusted with such a secret. He returned to the notes. Samuel had written about his fears. He wrote about strangers visiting the neighborhood, people asking questions, and the need to protect something valuable. The notes mentioned a path that would reveal the truth, but only to someone patient and careful. Ryan realized he was the person who had been chosen. The metal box, the fridge, the hidden panel, it had all been a test to find someone who would continue the story. Ryan's heart beat faster. He felt both proud and nervous. This was no longer a simple garage sale find. This was a living mystery, stretching across decades. The thought made his fingers tremble slightly as he touched the photographs. He decided to examine the items again. One photograph showed Samuel and his father at the wooden house, standing near a small tree. The notes hinted that beneath the tree, there had been a hidden compartment in the ground. Ryan paused. Could there still be something buried there? Was there more to discover? He ran his fingers over the photographs and notes, noticing small details he had missed before. One note mentioned a small symbol, a circle with a line through it. It was drawn on some of the photographs, indicating specific locations or objects. Ryan studied the images and realized the symbol matched the position of the hidden panel in the old house. Samuel had been guiding the finder carefully, step by step. Ryan's mind raced with possibilities. He had uncovered the fridge, the metal box, the photographs, and the notes. Now, the story seemed to be leading him somewhere else. The idea of a hidden compartment beneath a tree felt both exciting and daunting. He knew he needed a plan. He spent the rest of the day carefully organizing everything. The photographs were lined up in order, from Samuel as a child to the later images of him protecting the chest. The notes were arranged in chronological order. Ryan made a small map in his notebook, marking the locations and symbols he had discovered. Everything pointed to a single conclusion: there was more hidden treasure, not of gold, but of truth. Ryan also noticed that some notes mentioned a friend of Samuel's. This friend had helped him protect the secrets, hiding items and creating warnings. Ryan wondered if the friend had ever found someone else to continue the story, or if he had waited all these years for a finder like Ryan. As the sun set, Ryan felt the weight of responsibility. He was holding a secret that had been guarded for decades. Samuel and his family had trusted someone to protect it, and now it was Ryan. He felt a strange mixture of pride, fear, and excitement. This was no ordinary discovery. This was a mission, a puzzle, and a connection to the past all in one. That night, Ryan could not sleep. He thought about Samuel, the hidden panel, and the possibility of a buried compartment beneath the tree. The photographs seemed to speak to him, guiding him toward the next step. He wondered how many people had passed by the wooden house without noticing the small details, the signs that Samuel had left behind. Early the next morning, Ryan packed his bag with gloves, a small flashlight, and a notebook. He carefully placed the metal box and photographs inside a protective case. He wanted to keep everything safe. Today, he would return to the wooden house and explore the tree and its surroundings. He felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. When he arrived, the wooden house looked quiet and abandoned. The tree was large and strong, with roots twisting around the ground. Ryan approached carefully, remembering the note's warnings about patience and care. He knelt by the base of the tree, inspecting the soil. There were no obvious signs of a hidden compartment, but the soil seemed disturbed in a small circle near the roots. Ryan grabbed a small spade from his bag and began to dig gently. The dirt was soft but packed tightly in places. After a few minutes, he uncovered a small wooden box, partially hidden beneath the roots. His heart raced. Could this be another box belonging to Samuel? He lifted the box carefully. It was small, about the size of a lunchbox, and worn with age. The latch was old, but still functional. Ryan brushed off the dirt and examined it closely. He noticed the same symbol he had seen in the photographs, the circle with a line through it. This confirmed his suspicions. Samuel had left this for someone like Ryan to find. Ryan placed the box on the ground and slowly opened it. Inside, he found more photographs, additional notes, and a small key. The notes were even more personal than the first set. They described events that had taken place in the neighborhood, secrets that Samuel and his friend had hidden, and warnings about people who might misuse the information. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. The story was becoming more real, more urgent. He realized that Samuel had been preparing someone for years to discover the truth, and now that person was him. The responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders, but he also felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. As he studied the new materials, Ryan knew that his adventure was only beginning. The metal box in his garage, the hidden panel, the buried compartment, all were pieces of a larger puzzle. Samuel had trusted someone to uncover the story carefully, and that someone was Ryan. He carefully packed the items back into the box and placed it in his bag. He looked around the quiet surroundings, feeling a deep connection to the past. The house, the tree, and the hidden compartments were more than physical objects. They were links to a story that had survived decades. Ryan understood that patience, care, and careful observation would be essential in uncovering everything Samuel had left behind. Ryan took a deep breath. He was ready for the next step. The mystery was unfolding, and he would follow the path Samuel had laid out. Each photograph, each note, and each symbol was a guide, and he was determined to honor the trust that had been placed in him. The The journey was far from over, but Ryan felt a quiet confidence. He had discovered the first layer of the secret, and he knew there was more to come. The past was alive in the photographs, the notes, and the boxes, and Ryan was ready to follow Samuel's story wherever it led. The next morning, Ryan returned to his garage with a metal box and photographs carefully packed. He spread everything out on the workbench, determined to understand more about Samuel's story. The notes and pictures were like pieces of a puzzle, each one pointing to a secret carefully hidden for decades. Ryan felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. He knew that every small detail mattered. He picked up one of the notes from the newly discovered box. It read, "Some secrets are hidden where eyes cannot see. Follow the symbols and trust your patience. Do not rush. Only then will the story reveal itself." Ryan studied the small circle with a line through it. The symbol appeared on photographs, on notes, and on the small box he had found buried beneath the tree. Clearly, Samuel had created a system to guide anyone who found the boxes. Ryan realized that his discovery at the wooden house was only the beginning. There was more to uncover, and he needed to follow each clue carefully. He examined the photographs again. Some showed Samuel standing near objects that seemed ordinary, a lantern, a bench, even a stone in the yard. But in each picture, there was always the symbol, subtly included, often in a corner or carved lightly into the object. Ryan realized that Samuel had been marking locations, objects, and details that led to the next piece of the puzzle. Ryan decided to start with the stone shown in one of the photographs. It was large and smooth, sitting near the edge of the house's yard. He packed the metal box carefully into his backpack and returned to the house. When he arrived, the wooden house appeared as quiet and abandoned as before. He approached the stone and examined it closely. At first, it seemed ordinary, but then he noticed faint scratches on its side. They matched the symbol from the photographs. Ryan carefully pushed and lifted the stone. Beneath it, he found a shallow cavity in the ground. Inside, there was another small wooden box, smaller than the previous ones. It was worn but solid, with a tiny latch. Ryan's heart raced. Samuel's system was real, and he had followed it correctly. He opened the box and found a few more photographs and notes. One photograph showed Samuel and his friend at the house, holding the small chest together. Another note explained more about the purpose of the hidden items. The truth is not dangerous, but the unwise may misuse it. Protect it. Remember, understanding comes from patience and care. Ryan felt a deep sense of connection to Samuel and his friend. He could imagine their careful planning, the way they had hidden each box, each note, and each photograph to preserve their story for the right person. Ryan understood that this trust was extraordinary. As he continued to study the new materials, he noticed a reference to a nearby forest. One note mentioned a tree with a carved mark that would guide him to the next secret. Ryan realized that his next step was no longer at the house itself. He needed to follow Samuel's trail into the forest, where the final pieces of the story were likely hidden. Ryan returned home to plan his journey into the forest. He studied the notes, mapping each location and symbol in his notebook. Every clue seemed connected, forming a trail designed to test observation, patience, and care. He could feel Samuel's careful guidance, as if the boy and his friend were watching over him, making sure he did not make a mistake. The next morning, Ryan packed a small bag with a metal box, the photographs, gloves, a flashlight, and a notebook. He left his house early, eager to continue following Samuel's trail. The forest was a short drive from the wooden house, but its dense trees and twisting paths made it feel isolated. Ryan knew he had to stay focused and observant. As he entered the forest, the sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground. Ryan carefully followed the trail described in the notes. He looked for trees with the carved symbol, branches that matched the photographs, and any subtle signs left by Samuel. After a short walk, he found a tree with a faint circle and line carved into its bark. His heart raced. This was the next clue. Ryan examined the area around the tree. The ground was uneven, with roots twisting through the soil. Using his gloves, he moved aside leaves and dirt, searching for a hidden compartment. After several minutes, he noticed a small hollow in the roots, just big enough to hold a box. Carefully, he reached inside and pulled out a flat wooden container. It was lighter than the previous boxes, but just as old and worn. Inside the container were more notes and photographs. The photographs were of Samuel with various people in the neighborhood, some faces familiar, others unknown. The notes described events that had happened long ago, small acts of kindness, warnings about people who might misuse secrets, and advice about how to protect valuable information. Ryan realized that Samuel and his friend had carefully documented not only objects but also events and people, preserving a part of history that could easily have been forgotten. Ryan spent hours in the forest, studying each photograph and note. He could feel the story taking shape in his mind. Samuel and his friend had hidden knowledge, not of treasure or gold, but of the truth about their lives, their community, and their careful protection of secrets. The metal box, the buried containers, and the photographs were pieces of a story meant to teach patience, care, and responsibility. As the sun began to set, Ryan packed everything carefully. The forest was quiet, the shadows growing longer, but he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had followed Samuel's trail faithfully, uncovering the next layer of the story. Each discovery strengthened his connection to the past and increased his sense of responsibility. Back at his garage, Ryan organized everything he had found that day. The metal box, the photographs, and the notes were carefully arranged on the workbench. He realized that the story was far from over. Samuel's trail was still unfolding, and each clue led to another, deeper secret. Ryan felt both excited and nervous. He was learning more about Samuel, the hidden objects, and the importance of patience and careful observation. Ryan knew that the next step would be even more challenging. The final secrets might require more thought, more effort, and even more courage. But he was ready. The journey had taught him that the story was not about rushing or taking risks blindly. It was about respect for the past, for the people who had hidden the items, and for the careful planning that had preserved these secrets for decades. That night, Ryan sat at his workbench, studying the notes and photographs by the light of a small lamp. The forest, the hidden panel in the house, the buried boxes, they were all connected, forming a trail of knowledge and trust. Ryan could feel Samuel's presence in the careful planning, in the precise placement of symbols, and in the detailed photographs. The boy and his friend had trusted someone to follow the story faithfully, and now Ryan understood that he was that person. As he closed his eyes to rest, he felt a quiet excitement. The next day would bring another step in the journey, another clue to uncover, and perhaps even a deeper understanding of the story Samuel and his friend had hidden for so long. Ryan knew that patience, care, and careful observation would continue to guide him. The story was alive, waiting to reveal its full truth to someone who was willing to follow it faithfully. The next morning, Ryan woke up early, feeling both excited and nervous. He had followed Samuel's trail carefully, discovering the metal box, the photographs, the notes, the hidden panel in the house, and the buried boxes in the forest. But something told him that the most important secret was still waiting. He packed his backpack with a metal box, all the photographs, the notes, gloves, and a flashlight. Today, he would uncover the truth. Ryan drove to the wooden house first. The sun had barely risen, and the air was fresh and quiet. He walked to the large tree near the house, the one Samuel had marked in the photographs with the carved symbol. The ground around it had been disturbed before, but Ryan suspected that there was still one last secret waiting. He knelt down and inspected the soil carefully. After a few minutes, he found a small, flat stone hidden beneath some roots. Lifting it, he revealed a narrow cavity in the ground. Inside was another wooden box, smaller than the previous ones, but heavier. The metal latch was worn, but it opened without resistance. Ryan's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the lid. Inside were more photographs, notes, and a small key attached to a tiny tag. The notes explained more of the story. Samuel and his friend had hidden their most important item here, something that revealed the truth about their neighborhood, their families, and the events that had shaped their lives. The key was meant to open the final box, the one that had started it all, the rusty refrigerator. Ryan carefully read the notes. They instructed that the metal box in the fridge contained the ultimate secret. It had to be handled with care, patience, and respect. Samuel and his friend had prepared for decades to ensure that only the right person would uncover it. Ryan felt a sense of responsibility heavier than anything he had ever felt. He drove back to his garage, carrying the wooden box carefully. He placed it on the workbench next to the rusty refrigerator. The sunlight streamed through the window, highlighting the scratches and dents on the old appliance. Ryan took a deep breath. This was the final step. The key in the wooden box would unlock the secret that had been waiting for decades. He removed the small metal box from the wooden container and inserted the key into the latch. The lock clicked open, and Ryan lifted the lid slowly. Inside, he found a collection of items carefully wrapped in cloth. There were old letters, photographs, a small notebook, and a tiny, intricately carved wooden chest. His heart raced. This was the heart of Samuel's secret. Ryan carefully unfolded one of the letters. The handwriting was neat and deliberate. It explained the story in detail. Samuel and his friend had discovered something important in their neighborhood many years ago. It was not treasure or money, but knowledge, a record of people, events, and acts of kindness that had been forgotten. They had hidden it to protect it from those who would misuse it. The letters explained who people were, what had happened, and why it was important to preserve the truth. Ryan opened the tiny carved chest inside the box. Inside, there were even smaller objects, a compass, a magnifying glass, and a folded piece of paper. The note explained that these were tools to help the finder understand the story, to follow clues, and to connect the pieces of the past with the present. Ryan realized that Samuel and his friend had prepared not only the items themselves but also a way to interpret them. He carefully examined each photograph. Some showed Samuel as a child, holding small boxes and letters. Others showed him and his friend documenting the neighborhood, recording names, events, and objects that mattered. Ryan could see the care in every detail. Samuel had thought of everything, leaving instructions, notes, and guidance for the person who would one day find the secret. As Ryan read through the final notebook, he understood the full depth of the story. It was about trust, patience, responsibility, and respect for the past. Samuel and his friend had wanted someone who could handle the secret with care and who would continue their work, preserving the truth for the future. Ryan felt honored. He realized that the story was more than a mystery. It was a lesson about the importance of history, observation, and thoughtful action. Ryan spent hours organizing everything. He placed the photographs, letters, and notes back into the metal box. The tiny carved chest and the tools went carefully on top. He understood now that the rusty refrigerator had been the perfect hiding place. No one would suspect an old, broken appliance. And by leaving the secret there, Samuel had ensured that only someone observant and patient would discover it. He sat back on the stool and looked at the workbench. Everything was connected: the house, the hidden panel, the tree, the buried boxes, and now the final contents of the metal box. Ryan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had followed the trail carefully and discovered the complete story. Samuel and his friend's trust had not been in vain. Ryan also realized that the journey had changed him. He had learned to be patient, observant, and thoughtful. He had learned that small details matter, that history is precious, and that responsibility comes with discovery. He understood that some secrets are meant not for curiosity, but for understanding, and that true treasure is the knowledge and trust passed from one generation to another. That evening, Ryan carefully placed the metal box back inside the rusty refrigerator. He made sure the envelope with the original warning was on top. Everything was as Samuel had intended. The fridge, the boxes, and the notes would remain safe until someone else, someday, was ready to continue the story. Ryan stood back and looked at the refrigerator. It no longer seemed like an ordinary old appliance. It was a guardian of secrets, a container of history, and a symbol of trust. He felt a quiet pride in being part of this story, part of a legacy that had waited decades to be discovered. He switched off the light in the garage and left the room. Outside, the night was calm, and the stars shone brightly. Ryan knew that the story was complete for now, but that the legacy of Samuel and his friend would continue. By uncovering the secret, he had honored the trust, patience, and care that had been left behind. Ryan smiled, feeling a sense of peace. The rusty refrigerator had been more than a discovery. It had been a journey into the past, a lesson in responsibility, and a connection to people he had never met but who had trusted him completely. He understood that the greatest treasures are not gold or jewels, but trust, knowledge, and the careful protection of history. The next morning, Ryan cleaned the garage, making sure everything was in order. The metal box remained hidden inside the fridge, just as Samuel had planned. But Ryan felt changed. He had learned the meaning of patience, care, and responsibility. And he knew that one day, someone else might follow the trail he had discovered, continuing the story, and keeping the legacy alive. As Ryan walked away from the fridge, he felt a sense of accomplishment and wonder. He had begun the day as a man who bought an old appliance at a garage sale. He ended it as the keeper of a secret that had traveled decades, hidden carefully by a boy and his friend who had trusted someone to continue their story. Ryan understood that some discoveries are more than surprises. They are lessons, adventures, and connections that last a lifetime. And the rusty refrigerator, once forgotten, had become the guardian of a story that would continue to inspire, teach, and remind anyone who found it that trust, patience, and care are the greatest treasures of all.